Hello, welcome back. In this video, part 2 of setting up my palette. A little bit more information about the paints I have in my palette and what I suggest you have. So welcome back. For those of you that haven't been here before, my name's Charles and on this channel I do all things watercolour related. So if you're into that kind of stuff, please consider subscribing. Remember to hit that little bell so don't miss out on any of the content. Last time I showed you all the paints that I have in my palette and the order in which I set them out. This time we're going to go into a little bit more detail into some of the paints. The first one's the violet. It's Dioxazine violet or Winsor violet. It's just a very deep violet. This I call a bridging colour because it mixes so well with all other colours in the palette. It's great for mixing darks and it gives you a nice punch. Yes, you can mix violets with your blues and your reds, and I still do that, but this is a convenient colour for me to have. Now we come to the blues. Ultramarine Blue, Cobalt Blue, Cerulean Blue and Prussian Blue. 4 blues. Now, you don't have to have 4 blues. I have 4 blues. I find it very useful for mixing greens. Just gives me a great scope to mix my darks, and each of the colours have different characteristics. And I think this is the important point when you buy blues. If you buy 4 blues, and particularly if you're changing brands between the blues, make sure, really make sure, that your blues do vary. You don't want to get ultramarine blue and cobalt blue that look the same. They need to have different characteristics. Check out this other video that I made. I'll put a link down in the description as well, where I compare ultramarine blue from different brands. So for me, the ultramarine blue needs to be warm and it needs to granulate. It needs to give you that speckledy look, or flocculate. Same thing. Well, no, it's not the same thing, but I'm not going to go into it now, but it gives you a similar look. So make sure that it does that. Some of them don't. The next one is Cobalt Blue, and this is what we consider to be a true blue. It's what people think of as blue when you say, oh, I've got a blue paint or I've got a blue house, like the bear in the big blue house. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the big blue house. It's that blue that people think of. It's kind of in the center. Then the next one I have is Cerulean Blue. Now this is another one that varies widely across brands, but I like a Cerulean Blue that is soft. Again, gives me beautiful granulation and it's quite subtle. And then the final one is Prussian Blue, but you want this to have punch. You want this to really be nice and rich. Prussian Blue is great for mixing darks. It's great for mixing those vibrant greens. Great glazing color, but it does have a big drying shift. So look at those 4 blues. They've got to vary a lot. Then we come on to the greens. Now the greens, you can find out a little bit more about the 2 greens I have in my palette. I won't go through it now. You can watch this video, which I made about mixing greens not so long ago. That tells you about the 2 greens that I have in my palette. Winsor Green, blue shade, and Cobalt Turquoise light. Yellows are interesting. I have a Cadmium Yellow Pale, which is a bit like Cadmium Yellow Mid in other brands. I have an Indian Yellow, or you could use a Cad Yellow Deep. Again, like the blues, the important thing with the yellows is there's the difference. One warm and one cooler. Don't get 2 yellows that are the same. The reason we want differences in all these colours is it gives us more scope. The other yellow, which is Indian Yellow or Cad Yellow Deep or Gamboge or something like that, I like it to be kind of like a egg yolky colour. And those 2 will give you great scope for mixing greens and oranges and things like that. But I really think they're beautiful on their own. Then we come to Raw Sienna. I use a lot of Raw Sienna. I use a Winsor & Newton Raw Sienna. I still think it's one of the best Raw Siennas around, if not the best. For my purposes anyway, because I want it to be warm, I want it to have a glow. There's some Raw Siennas out there that look quite muddy. Then we have my earthy colours, or earthy reds if you like. I've got Raw Umber, and again, I mentioned the differences in Raw Umber in this video. There's a little thing up here somewhere for you to check that out. Again, I'll put it down in the description. So raw umbers can vary a lot. I have burnt umber as well. You don't really need both. You could get away with having one or none really. Again, this is my personal choice. Raw umber, burnt umber, and burnt sienna. Now, burnt siennas I like, and I like it to be quite a warm orangey burnt sienna. But those three colours, those three earthy reds, are fantastic for mixing greys. And they're beautiful on their own. But for mixing greys, when you mix them with your ultramarines and cobalts, you get these lovely greys. Normally I've only got two reds. Cad red, which I use not just for accents, but for mixing very subtle violets. And then permanent alizarin crimson. I might have mentioned in another video that some people like to use rose madder, but I much prefer crimson because it gives me more scope. It's deeper, it's darker, and I can get more of a range of colours. Mixing that with ultramarine gives you really punchy violets. Very good glazing colour as well, and really good for mixing rich darks. Any of those intense colours, your Prussian Blue, your permanent alizarin crimson, your viridian or your phthalo green, they're all staining colours, really strong colours, and they're all fantastic for mixing rich, powerful, colourful darks. We come to the colours that I don't have in my palette all the time, but I just have occasionally. But I love Perylene Maroon or Maroon. It's like a nice deep red wine. It's luscious, and again gives me beautiful violets when I mix it with my Cobalt Blue. Just very velvety. It's Potter's Pink. Potter's Pink's a kind of a wheat colour, granulates beautifully again, and it's got this salmony undertone, which is, I think, works best, Potter's Pink, when you don't mix it too much with other colours. It's a colour that shines on its own. I also like to use occasionally cadmium orange or transparent orange, a really punchy orange. I know I can mix my own oranges, but sometimes you just can't get that oomph, and using a pure pigment colour or a pure colour gives you that punch that sometimes you want, that richness of colour. Indigo occasionally, and sometimes I like to use neutral tint. So indigo, neutral tint, even though they're different colours, I tend to, I mix them as well, but I tend to use those two on separate occasions. Opera rose, now that's a colour that you can't ignore. That's a screaming colour. Beautiful though, beautiful though. I also have whitewash. Now I know the purists out there are going to say, gouache? That's not a real watercolour. Well, okay, that's fine. If you think so, I can substitute it with titanium white watercolour, and I challenge you to tell the difference in my final painting. I don't actually care about any of that.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Do you? I hope you don't. Look, I'm not a purist. I don't care about any of those things. At the end of the day, I want my painting to work. Watercolour is a contemporary medium. Let's treat it that way. But at the end of the day, really your choice of colours is yours. That's why it's your choice. It's not the colours that's going to make or break your painting. There are so many other factors that go into a painting. This can help your choice of colours, those little idiosyncratic qualities of the colours, the combinations, what they can do, what they can't do. Whatever colours you end up buying, remember I suggest you set your palette out the same way each time. Get to know your colours, know the characteristics of your colours, and understand colour mixing. This is your instrument after all. That's it for today. Just an extension on part one. Hope you enjoyed it. Please share it with your friends. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it as usual. And not as usual, you usually enjoy all my videos. I'm asking you to hit the button, the like, thumbs up button if you liked it. And I usually ask you to do that, and none of that probably made sense to you, but it did to me. So maybe just ignore all that. and just hit the like button if you enjoyed it. What I'd like to know in this video, in the comments, I'd love you to tell me what is the color in your palette that you die for. You know, the color in your palette. What's the luscious one? The one you can't, well, it doesn't have to be luscious, it can be quite dull, but the color you can't live without. I'm curious, let me know, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Happy painting.